A project aims to improve the health of the Hoosier National Forest by removing non-native pine trees, regenerating native oak and hickory trees, and creating more early forest habitat that some wildlife depend on. But Indiana Public Broadcasting's Rebecca Thiel reports controversy over the project has pitted environmental groups and some nearby residents against forest managers.
So today I'm going to talk a little bit about oak ecosystem restoration.
Last week, the Forest Service offered public tours of the Hoosier National Forest to help people understand the goals of the Buffalo Springs Restoration Project. It calls for cutting down trees, prescribed fires, and using some herbicides on thousands of acres near Patoka Lake.
The one thing all these disturbances have in common is they allow sunlight through the forest canopy down to the forest floor.
Swaim says new oak and hickory trees need that sunlight to grow. Without it, maple and beech trees have started to move in and take over the forest. Swaim says these native oaks and hickories are very important to this area.
They're used by more species of wildlife. They create more habitat. They're much better at stabilizing soils than other species. They're much better at storing carbon than other species due to the density of the wood. So losing the oak ecosystem is going to be a really bad thing.
In this patch of forest, only the trees with pink ribbons are going to be left standing. The size of this project is cause for concern for groups like the Hoosier Environmental Council and the Indiana Forest Alliance. Among other things, they worry clear-cutting could erode areas around the lake, adding more sediment pollution to the drinking water for 65,000 residents. HEC Senior Policy Director Tim Maloney says there are practices the Forest Service can do to reduce some of that erosion, but not all.
So the question is whether that risk of more sediment in our waterways that already face, risks from too much sediment and too many nutrients, are these kind of forest management projects going to exacerbate that?
In March, a federal district court ruled partly in favor of environmental groups regarding a similar project near Lake Monroe. The court said the Forest Service didn't mention how Lake Monroe is already dealing with sediment pollution or provide a convincing statement of reasons why the project wouldn't exacerbate those problems. The court ruled in favor of the Forest Service on other claims, however. Chad Menke is a hydrologist and fish biologist with the Hoosier National Forest. He says in the Buffalo Springs project, the Forest Service will take steps to reduce erosion. That includes avoiding floodplain areas and using existing trails when possible. He said the Forest Service will also monitor the water quality and for soil disturbance. Menke says the project will also take place slowly, over 10 years or more.
This project seems huge, but in reality, if you only harvest a few hundred acres a year, you're going in, by the time you go to your next spot, the other parts have already healed up.
Environmental groups also worry cutting down some stands of older trees would reduce the amount of carbon emissions the forest can absorb to fight climate change. Jeff Dukes is a Purdue University professor and directs the Purdue Climate Change Research Center. He says storing carbon is important, but creating suitable habitat for Indiana species may be a more important goal here.
Carbon can be stored in a lot of places, and the atmosphere doesn't really care where it's getting stored. But a given species can't necessarily exist anywhere on the planet.
There is a possibility.
Duke says environmental groups and residents have valid perspectives, and it's laudable that they want to keep the Forest Service accountable. But he also feels the Forest Service is doing its best to create a healthy ecosystem.
I think this is a case of two groups that are basically on the same side that are having an argument over how you get to a good objective.
For Indiana News Desk, I'm Rebecca Thiel.